Hello, my name is Miss Kilburn-Bond and I work with all the English departments across the Athelston Trust, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about the English Language Paper 2, Question 5, so that's Section B. And this is the fifth of 5 videos, so the last video. In the other 4 videos I've gone through the reading questions in Section A, so if you've missed those and that's of interest to you first, then you can go back and watch those. But in this video I'm specifically just talking about the writing section, Question 5. And all of these videos, the aim is to help you understand the overall format of the GCSE English Language Paper 2, revise the priorities for each question, and hopefully by the end of each video you have developed a strategy that you can apply to each answer. And the same is going to be true for Question 5. So you'll see the Father Christmas picture here. That's because if you have watched the other videos, you'll know that the 2 sources that I used as an example to help explain the paper were both themed around Christmas. And that means that whatever the theme is of the paper you get in your exam, the question 5 will be very loosely linked to something similar. And you'll see that now when we look at Section B, the writing paper, Question 5. So it tells you, first of all, you're advised to spend around 45 minutes on this section. And it's really important that you do that because it's 50% of this whole paper. That makes it 25% of your whole language GCSE. It deserves the right amount of time. So 45 minutes. Out of that, you're probably going to be planning for 5 minutes and leaving 5 minutes at the end for your editing and polishing of what you've written. So 35 minutes of intense writing with those 5 minutes either side. You obviously need to write in full sentences. You need to do your absolute best in this question in terms of spelling and punctuation and grammar and vocabulary, because all of that's going to count. You are reminded of the need to plan. It is so important. Research shows that students who plan their writing are much more likely to write something that's structured and works within the time that you've got. And as I've said, leave enough time to check at the end, because everyone makes mistakes, and when you go back through and read it you often will spot some, and that could save you a mark here and there. So in Question 5 you're going to be given a quotation that suggests a viewpoint, an opinion, because remember the whole theme of Paper 2 is around perspectives and viewpoints, so it makes sense that they give you somebody's opinion about an issue. And in this case we've got a viewpoint about Christmas. Christmas has become all about businesses making money and nothing else. This puts more pressures on families to always strive to make each Christmas bigger than the last. We need to return to the real spirit of goodwill to all and peace on earth. So your job is to then write an article for a broadsheet newspaper in which you argue for or against this statement. It's absolutely up to you whether you choose to agree with that point of view or you choose to disagree with it. Now it's marked out of 40, so it's a big mark question. 24 of those marks are for your content and your organisation. So that's for the quality of ideas, the development of ideas that you put in your writing and how you structure those ideas. 16 of those marks are for your technical accuracy. So that's why I mentioned at the beginning your spelling, your vocabulary, your grammar, your punctuation. All of those are going to contribute to those 16 marks. So it really is important that before you go into the exam, you are practicing writing as something that is a skill that can improve through practice. Now, a really sensible way to look at this question is through these 3 words. You might have heard teachers talk about the path of a piece of writing, and what that means is the purpose, so that's in green, the audience in pink, and the format in blue. Purpose, audience, format. You might also have heard teachers talk about the who, the why and the what. They mean exactly the same thing. Who, why, what, www, like the start of a website, easy to remember. The audience, the purpose and the text type. So the word format is replaced by the word text type. Audience, who, purpose, why. You can choose which of those 2 you prefer to learn, purpose, audience, format, or who, why and what, but they mean the same thing. When you look at this question for Question 5, it's absolutely crucial that before you do anything you stop and you think, okay, what is the purpose, the audience and the format of what I'm being asked to do? Or you think, okay, who who's my audience, why, what's my purpose, and what kind of text type is it. They're exactly the same questions. So you'll notice that the question is repeated again at the top, and I've underlined using that same colour code. So write an article. The format is an article, it's underlined in blue. For a broadsheet newspaper, the audience are the kind of people who read a broadsheet newspaper. So that's a newspaper that's particularly formal in its layout. And then what's my purpose? Well, underlined in green, you're either arguing for or you're arguing against the statement. And if you get your purpose and your audience and your format right from the start, then you're already collecting points. So I'm going to show you some examples now of students who haven't got their purpose, audience and format right, students who are very good writers, and hopefully this will help you understand why it's so important that you do think this through first. So here's a student, and here's the start of their response. Good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. How many of you are facing January with an empty bank account, having spent too much on Christmas presents? It's a common problem, and something I am going to argue could be avoided. Now, your first impression might be, well, that sounds very clear, it's focused on the question, we've got a nice rhetorical question there to engage your reader, but I've put this in blue because the problem here is the format. This sounds like the start of a speech. Good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. That doesn't sound to me like the start of a newspaper article. So that's an example of a student who's obviously a very good writer, who's read the question and knows how to engage with the topic, but they haven't really thought about what a broadsheet newspaper is and what that's going to sound like. It doesn't sound like that article. Okay, this student, writing in green, which might give you a bit of a clue as to what's happening here, writes this. Determined to make Christmas bigger and better than ever before, one particularly cold day, I had gone into town in search of decorations that would make my guests gasp with delight. Instinct led me down a previously unexplored alley, adorned with candle lights and reminiscent of a scene from A Christmas Carol. Now, I can see lots of great things in this writing. I noticed some alliteration with the gasping guests. We've got this lovely reference to A Christmas Carol. We've got really impressive vocabulary. We've got great complex sentences. But the purpose is not right in this example, because again, this isn't really sounding like the start of a broadsheet newspaper article that's arguing for or against a statement. I'm not clear yet whether I'm reading the start of a story or what, and it should be really immediately clear what your purpose is. It should sound like an argument for or against a statement, and this example just doesn't do that. So here's our third student. Hey, fellow children of Britain, let's get together and do for the Christmas spirit what Greta has done for climate change. Forget writing Amazon wish lists and start embracing the old idea of peace on earth, the sort of thing your granny writes inside a Christmas card. Now again, this student is very skilled at writing in an entertaining, engaging way, but this student hasn't understood their audience. The average broadsheet newspaper reader isn't going to respond well to hello fellow children of Britain, because most of them are going to be adults for a start. Let's get together and do for the Christmas spirit what Greta has done for climate change. Well, Greta, again, an immediately sort of teenage reference, perhaps not suitable for the audience. Forget writing Amazon wish lists and start embracing the old idea of peace on earth, the sort of thing your granny writes inside a Christmas card. Well, yes, it's entertaining, but the broadsheet newspaper adult serious audience not probably going to relate to their granny writing inside a Christmas card still. So in each of these examples, we've got three great writers, but who have either got their purpose, their audience, or the format of the task wrong. They didn't start off by carefully asking themselves, who am I writing for? Why am I writing? And what does the text type I've been given sound like? So let's see this student next, who manages to get their purpose, audience, and format spot on. This is just the beginning of their writing. Bar humbug to the modern Scrooge. We've immediately got a heading because this is a broadsheet newspaper article, and the format of an article would always have a heading that would be in some way engaging, and this is clever, which suits the broadsheet educated audience. Bar humbug to the modern Scrooge. We've already got a reference to A Christmas Carol, so a cultural reference that people might understand. Like Dickens's Christmas Ghosts, there is one Christmas card I received that just keeps haunting my thoughts. It was a simple picture of a wintry scene, but it was the message printed on the inside that unsettled my thoughts, wishing you goodwill and peace on earth. Until that moment, my Christmas activities had been motivated by the pursuit of the best online recipe I could find that would make my brother's 5-course meal from last year seem like a bad takeaway. And it was at this moment that I realised that this is the problem that plagues our nation. Christmas has become about money, about competition, and about pressure. Well, I say bar humbug to that and urge you to do so too. And if you are not already converted, let me take you on a journey from Christmas past to Christmas future. By the end, I defy you not to start making Christmas about the things that really matter in the world. This looks and sounds and is structured like an article. It sounds like it's written for adults, educated adults who enjoy the experience of reading, engaging in debate, and there's already, even from the first paragraph, a clear sense of arguing for or against the statement. It actually uses the quotation that came from that statement and talks about it and turns that into the story of the Christmas card that the writer opens near the beginning. It's clever, it's witty, it does have humour, it's got references to A Christmas Carol, like I've already said, it's got superior vocabulary, all those things that that the examiner's going to be looking for. But most importantly, we're really clear from the start that this student has remembered who they're writing for, why they're writing, and what kind of text they're writing. That's a really easy but important message that will help you in answering question 5. Now, if you've not got any ideas, then it's very difficult to get writing, even if you have worked out the purpose and the format and the audience. So what we're going to look at now is how you are faced with a statement and you start to plan your argument and organise those ideas so you can pick up those marks for structuring them. Now, quick to achieve in an exam is to do a little spidergram, which is what I'd call what we've got in front of us. You don't need to copy out the quote in the middle in an exam. You haven't got time for that. This is just to show you what I'm thinking. So I've got the quote in the middle because I'm using that to inspire what my argument might be. And here are some of the things that I'm coming up with. So I'm thinking, look, society has changed. The time when the phrase spirit of goodwill to all and peace on earth was very different to the society we live in now. So it's not fair to focus on those words anymore. I'm thinking that family is still the focus of Christmas and everyone's family is different and we shouldn't try and force the same traditions and views on everyone. I thought that goodwill can still be achieved even if we are busy spending more money on Christmases and things are more materialistic. It doesn't mean that goodwill isn't part of that. And then I started thinking, there is joy in giving presents and buying nice decorations, so can we really say that we should take that joy away? Then I thought, quite a powerful argument might be to say, well, striving to be better, to make your Christmas better than another one, actually it's quite admirable to never rest, to always try and make things better and more impressive. And we could also think, well, what about the importance of the economy? It's good for people to spend money because that keeps other people in jobs. Maybe we could also pick up on this idea of peace on earth. Peace on earth shouldn't just be about Christmas anyway. Peace on earth is something much more complicated that actually spans every single day of the year. And then I was thinking, well, actually, there has been a more recent trend in charity presents anyway, presents that give back in some way. So maybe this quotation isn't really a fair reflection of the way that everyone spends their Christmases. So those were some ideas that I quickly jotted down when I was thinking about the quotation. And that's what I would advise you to do at the start of an exam. Just jot down, throw some ideas on the paper. It doesn't matter if they're not brilliant ideas, just get something down so you can already start to think about how you could turn some into your writing. Now, hopefully you've noticed that some of those words have now changed colour, because what I would do next is then I'd look at the ideas I've come up with and I'd think, okay, does some of them work together a bit like best friends? Are some of them actually naturally forming a team, and in which case they're probably going to end up in the same paragraph? So you'll notice that I've got 2 in red, the changing society and the importance of economy. I think I could link those ideas together. In purple, I've put the trend for charity presents and the fact that goodwill can still be achieved, because I think they're an obvious link, an obvious pairing. And then in blue, family focus is valid, everyone's different, the joy of giving presents and decorations. I think I could make them work together like friends and put those in the same paragraph. So you could maybe colour code this, or just simply write a label or draw some arrows between them quickly in an exam. It would take seconds, no more than a minute, to kind of put all those ideas together. And what that means is you're then ready to organise those ideas into paragraphs, because it does matter what you start with. It does matter where you end up at the end of your argument. You do need to think, what would be a great way to start? What would be a really powerful way to end my argument? So I'm going to start with the idea of society changing, then I'm going to move on to the joy of giving presents and that everyone's family should be allowed to choose how they want to spend Christmas. Then I'm going to move through to any way I think goodwill can be achieved, look at charity presents. Then I'm going to look at striving to be better actually can be admired. And then I'm going to end with the much bigger idea about peace on earth isn't just about Christmas anyway, because I think that's quite a nice powerful way of sort of blowing up the other argument and making my argument sound more valid. And what I've got now is an essay plan. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. So let's now think about what the examiner's looking for. So we've got our examiner here, and we've got the top marks that you could get in this answer. So let's look at the content at the top for the upper level 4, the 22 to 24 marks. Your content has to have convincing and compelling communication. So it's got to be something that's enjoyable to read, that makes you want to get to the end of it, because reading it is a joy, it's engaging. The tone, the style, the register are assuredly matched to purpose and audience. So that's exactly what I was saying at the beginning. You've got your purpose, your audience, a format, it all fits together nicely. Extensive and ambitious vocabulary with sustained crafting of linguistic devices. And it's those linguistic devices I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. And then your organisation, varied and inventive use of structural features. It absolutely has to have paragraphs, but what can we do with those paragraphs to make them more interesting? Is it relevant to have subheadings or bullet points? Is it relevant to have firstly, secondly, thirdly as the way you're structuring your paragraph? Is there something more clever than that you can use? Are you going to keep linking back to a particular metaphorical idea, like the Charles Dickens, for example? Writing is compelling, incorporating a range of convincing and complex ideas, and fluently linked paragraphs with seamlessly integrated discourse markers. If your writing is really well structured, then you should be able to cut each paragraph up, throw them all over the floor, and someone should be able to pick them up and really quickly put them back in the right order, because the way your paragraphs are written should flow and link. So it's like you're following a map and everything makes sense. Now let's look back at the linguistic features, because you have to show the examiner that you are a skilled writer. So you've got to be able to use linguistic devices yourself. Now what you can see in front of you now, I want you to imagine, we'll take this Christmas theme and imagine that this is one of those places where you can go and pick your own Christmas tree. So it's a forest and it's filled with fir trees. Now you might very well have heard of people talking about the forest pie as a way of approaching question 5, because what a lot of videos talk about and teachers talk about, and rightly so, is the importance that you need to have strategies that anyone who's writing a non-fiction persuasive text might use, and sometimes the acronym of forest pie is used to help you do that. So if you look amongst the fir trees now, you can see the A for A forest pie stands for alliteration. Then for the word forest, we've got facts, opinions, repetition or rhetorical questions, emotive language, statistics, triplet power, pronouns, imperatives and exaggeration. They're all brilliant techniques, and it'd be great to see some of them in your writing. But the danger is that some students think that their writing has to be every single thing, and they tick off a forest pie, and you know that in their first paragraph the first thing they'll do is put some alliteration in, then they'll stick in a fact, then they'll stick in an opinion, then there'll be some repetition followed by some emotive language. You mustn't see it like that. Just like if you were going into this Christmas tree forest to choose your Christmas tree, you would choose the one that suited the room that you've got, the space that you've got to put it in. There might be something in particular that you like about that tree before you decided that's the one you wanted to cut down to take home for Christmas. Think of this in the same way. Don't see writing as something where you can have a tick list and just put in, oh, I'll stick in my exaggeration at the end and then I'll get a good mark. It's much more intelligent than that. You need to think, in this particular piece of writing, repetition is going to work really well for me at this point, but actually on this occasion I don't want any triplet power. Or pronouns work brilliantly all the way through this text, but I'm only going to use an imperative in my last paragraph. So think about how you're going to use techniques but not overuse them so they actually feel a bit cheap, so they don't actually make your writing seem like something that's quality. So here we've got the forest again, but this time I've added some other labelled fir trees into here, because also a forest pie doesn't include everything you might want to use anyway. For example, there's no anecdote mentioned, or a pun, or a connective, or sentence variety, or even similes, metaphors, and there are many more trees that we could add to the forest and label with techniques. So when you're thinking about being a brilliant writer in question 5, be aware of all these techniques, of all these different fir trees, but don't try and put them all into your writing. Pick the ones that are going to work for you. So let's have a look now at another example of someone writing at this top level who's picking out some of those fir trees but trying hard not to put them all in, trying to use them carefully. Have you ever been gifted a gift that gives back? Perhaps a certificate to recognise you have sponsored an emergency toilet for a community in crisis, or an adoption certificate for an endangered animal. Or maybe you buy charity Christmas cards, or put a pound coin in the bucket when the Santa sleigh stops in your road. We are a nation of charity supporters, and yes, whilst I'm sure that we could do more, you simply can't tell me that goodwill is dead. I would argue that goodwill is on the increase, with businesses under more pressure than ever to show how they support charitable causes, source sustainable products, and protect their workforce. Just like the businesses who profit from the Christmas festivities, charities rely on this time of year for a boost in donations, whether that be through gift buying or from donations at events like the school nativity, hospital carol singing, or an office collection in lieu of sending each other cards. The spirit of generosity is alive and well in 21st century Britain, so bar humbug to those of you who disagree. So I've colour coded, and you'll recognise from the other videos I use colour coding a lot to try and help you understand why this is a good answer, and I've labelled how the colour coding works. So on the top left hand side you can see in that blue colour we've got pronouns that create a relationship with the reader. So you can see quite often I'm using the word you or your or we or I to give that really powerful sense of I'm the writer and I want to have a relationship with you as my reader. Then over to the right hand side in the top we've got the red, rhetorical questions that engage with the reader's opinion, get an immediate reaction from them. So you can see a couple of red question marks as you go down the sort of top 4 or 5 lines. Then underneath that, in that orangey colour, using a range of punctuation can help create sentence variety, and that creates pace and interest to your writing. So we've got a semicolon at the top, we've got an exclamation mark at the end. All of that changes the structure and also can change the emotion and the tone of your writing. Back over to the left hand side we've got some triplet power, or sometimes you'll have heard that described as the rule of 3, putting 3 ideas together: support charitable causes 1, source sustainable products 2, and 3, protect their workforce. That adds strength and confidence to a piece of writing, particularly useful if you're listing kind of factual information. Then over to the right hand side in purple, using facts or statistics to add authority and weight to your argument can really help you sound like your argument is powerful, that you know what you're talking about. And then back to the left hand side at the bottom, it's okay to use some humour. I've used that link again to a cultural reference here, the bar humbug from Scrooge, but it adds a little bit of humour to the end of that first paragraph. And then finally in the dark blue, there's a really clear sense of argument. By the end of that first paragraph, it's absolutely clear to the examiner, this is the side of that statement that I'm taking and this is what I'm going to argue as I go through my article. So again, when you're practicing your writing, you can use a similar colour code to label and highlight and see how you're managing to tick those strategies as you're going through. So I really hope that helps. Just to recap, when you look at the question, think really hard about the purpose, the audience and the format before you do anything. Then you're going to think about your planning, come up with your ideas, link ideas together, number your ideas so you've got a clear plan going forwards. Then you're going to go into your metaphorical Christmas tree forest, and as you're writing, you're just going to pick a couple of those fir trees out, a couple of those techniques to engage with your reader to suit the type of writing that you're offering. And obviously using paragraphs, you're then going to explore that argument through an excellent piece of writing, with leaving that 5 minutes at the end to go back through, read, check, polish, improve. I hope that's helpful, and I hope if you've watched all 5 videos, you now feel a lot more confident about understanding how GCSE English Language Paper 2 works. You've got some priorities for each question, and now you can develop a strategy that you're able to apply to each answer. Thanks for listening and good luck.